terms of the future tax that the government will get will be huge. Okay, so we did a scenario where government does not give subsidy. We did a scenario where government gives subsidy. And over next 15 years, we tried to calculate what is the net present value to the government benefits. And we realized, based on the calculations, that in a subsidy scenario, the benefits are far more than no subsidy, where the growth may. Of course, these are some of the forecasts and based on certain premises and assumptions. And the idea is that if the industry grows to a level of maybe a few $1 billion per year, I mean, going forward, then the contribution eventually, 10 years hence, when you are not giving the subsidy by way of taxes, will be much, much more than what is there, what you would give now. And please understand, out of this 30%, 20% is anyway government is collecting by way of taxes. Okay, so it is to set off this 20% is the 20% is given, and effectively what government is giving is only 10%, which is the price advantage vis-a-vis the global people. Because that other 20% they are getting it back by way of various taxes.
But has anybody, have you made a study? It's quite interesting to understand that the shipyards once upon a time were the European yards, then it became the Japanese and Korean, then it came to China, and now it's India. What is making this thing move from say Europe to
labor cost?
Yes, there is a labor cost issue. See, there's a professor, Sebastian Morris, and Ahmedabad. He has done some studies on economic growth, and he says whichever countries industrializes later grows faster. Okay, he had studied it over a span of 250 years. So, like Europe used to grow by growth rate of 1 to 2% over 100 years, and then and this growth seems to be shifting towards the western side. So from Europe, the growth, the Central Europe, Austria was the first place where the industrialization really started. Then it shifted to UK, which grew by 2% over 70, 80 years. Then it shifted to North America, which grew by 3% over a shorter time frame. It shifted to Japan. Okay, in a 30-year time frame, they grew by almost 7, 8%. Then Southeast Asia. Now China, in last 15 years, has grown by 13%. So the theory says that first is it is moving westward from Europe to UK to North America to Japan to Southeast Asia or tiger countries to China, and then India. So he is of the view that India, in a very short span, maybe even lesser than China, could grow even faster than what China has grown in last. So there are economic and larger things which just shape. India's labor cost was always there for last 60 years. So why all of a sudden we are discovering our labor cost arbitrage, which was not discovered 15, 20, 30 years back. So there are global events which shift things, and so India seems to be right there in the, this is all knocking on the door. I don't know how much of that is, but it seems to be correct, because every day the growth rate seems to be accelerating faster. And in dollar terms, if the dollar is going down, and probably some of these guys, in dollar terms, our GDP growth rate could be almost 14-15%. So if rupee appreciates vis-a-vis dollar by 4 to 5%, and if rupee growth rate in terms of GDP, in terms of constant prices, is around 9%, then 9 plus 5, we can grow by 14%. And 14% means we can grow, we can double in 5 years. So by 2020, we can grow 8 times in dollar terms. And so if our current GDP is around $1 trillion or 800 billion or 900 billion, we can grow almost $7 to $8 trillion if this kind of phenomena is observed. Now these are of course large large growth models which people can predict and talk. And then the shipbuilding cycle gets linked with that. So the whole country, automobile is another big area of growth. Let me share with you, we've been working on that. India is going to export probably close to 1 million cars. We are making 1 million cars, but India is going to export close to 1 million cars by another 4 or 5 years, by 2010. And by 2015, we are going to export close to 3 million cars. So these are very, very big numbers. And actually all industrial sectors, the way the growth is coming is not experienced, and a lot of economists are baffled with the kind of growth rate taking place from bottoms up to the national level. and they seem to be only explained by the larger macroeconomic factors, not by what is happening. So shipbuilding looks like will grow, but subsidy is like one of the things which is there, but probably the time has come. Yeah, we'll have a lunch at around 1 o'clock. So we'll quickly probably take it forward. Yeah, next one. Now logistics and container. This is again a very high growth area, and that's where probably most of the private equity players are most interested in. That gives a very big stability of revenue, and in India, that's one area which is going to grow very much. Recently, Indian Railways has invited private participation in operating container trains. So there are 10 players, 14 players actually, who are going to operate trains and set up ICDs, CFS on an all India basis. And that linked with the the retail revolution that is taking place and the port side which is there is going to create a huge upside in terms of the investments, assets which are there, as well as the ramping up of the entire. So this will be a movable network of the entire logistics side that we are talking of. And here we have with us Mr. Virendra Kumar. He is from Reliance Anil Ambani Group, and we've been actually helping them and working with them on developing. Probably you could share some of your views on the logistics and the container side, and how the Reliance is looking at this sector, and what do you think are the possibilities?
We see a lot of growth in logistics business, not only related to the energy business, but the entire value chain, the supply management itself. So, but the thing has to evolve. We have various scenarios. We are looking at going whole hog. We are looking at going organic growth, and these decisions will become clearer. But the thing which I wanted to highlight in this seminar was, I think infrastructure development should be seen in an integrated manner. You allow private parties to go into airline fields, and you see traffic jam in Bombay and Delhi. Flight keeps roaming around the airport for hours. Now this is adding inefficiency. If the airport itself could have been developed further simultaneously when the license for private players was given, then the growth in air traffic would have been much faster and much better. Similarly, now we have given licenses to 14 container train operators, but we have not increased the track capacity. The dedicated freight corridor is just being talked about, and maybe tomorrow some inauguration will take place. There was a lot of pull and pressures between public sector doing on its own, inviting private public participation, and finally I think the railway industry wants to do it on its own. And they may give some pieces of tracks for private investment and generate the revenue for them, but more for railways themselves. Similarly, somebody was mentioning about JNPT. Now, JNPT, I believe, was initially thought of bulk cargo, and then that business did not pick up, so container